You start with a fragment, a sound. Sometimes you start with an image, with an idea. The most important thing is the sound. You have to get the sound of the poem, the music of the poem, I call it. And until you have that, you don't have anything. And that's the hardest part, is waiting for the music and the matter to come together. Because sometimes it can take many years to come together. Sometimes it can never. I have some poems in my files that I've had there for 30 years that basically I know now are never going to come together. But I still keep them just in case a miracle happens. So I had one poem that took 20 years, a poem about Martin Luther King that I had struggled with for off and on for 20 years and then finally figured out how to do it. The poem recounts an event that a black friend of mine on the way to the memorial for Martin Luther King was hassled by some police who were quite obviously doing it just to insult and bug him. And I wanted to work that drama into my own feelings about King and racism and the event. And there was actually another character in the poem for a while, and I finally realized that these two characters each needed their own poem. So then there were two poems, and when that happened, I could write both of them. I don't think of writer's block, I think of writer's despair. That there are times when you lose faith in the project, you lose faith in poetry, or if you're a fiction writer, even fiction. Although fiction writers, I think, have it a little easier in that their projects are longer. But with poetry, to try to do it every day, or to try to do it often, or to try to do it ever requires faith, because you just never know if it's going to happen. Sometimes it feels utterly absurd to sit there and say, now I'm going to be inspired. Now the muse is going to come. You think, how can I possibly say that? And that's sort of, I'm in that state right this last few weeks that I just can't see how it'll ever happen again. Although I know after 50 years of doing it that it will. Generally, you're working at something and struggling with it and moving words around and trying different phrases, and then suddenly something else will happen that you hadn't suspected. And then it takes you and you go with it. And it's an amazing feeling. It isn't really. It's the nature of lyric poetry from the very beginning. From Archilochos was the first Greek lyric poet, and he wore his heart on his sleeve. He was a soldier also, and there's a famous poem in which he talks about throwing his shield down, which is a sign of great cowardice. And he says, I threw my shield down and one of my enemies has it, but I can always get another shield. So basically, he's confessing his cowardice. And a lot of the first lyric poems also were about love, sexual love, frustrated love. And so that's the tradition of lyric poetry, is to tell the truth about one's inner life and bring it out so that it fuses with the outer life, with the outer world. That's poetry.